This is the Mind Body Detox podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom for how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back, everyone, to the Mind Body Detox podcast. I'm your host, integrative intuitive medium, Kara Lovehart, and we are going into another system, another tool for bringing awareness of the self. And as we talk about all the time on this podcast, how much awareness we have of the self will dictate how far we go in life, and of course, bringing peace into our journey, especially right now when there's so much polarization in the world. Having this awareness of ourselves and deep diving with a different tool, a different perspective is absolutely necessary. And so we are going to be talking about the Enneagram today. This is something that I was curious about back in 1993, I think it was. And I think I was like 16. This is when I first got my first astrology book, right? So just diving into self-development. And it's come a long way. So we are very fortunate today to have special guest, Dr. Deborah Threadgill Egerton, and she is the leading Enneagram teacher, a psychotherapist, and a Hay House bestselling author. And she serves as the president of the International Enneagram Association. So we have the expert here. She's also known as Dr. E, so you'll hear me talk to her as Dr. E today. And she founded Trinity Transition Consultants, and this is where she spent more than 2 decades using the Enneagram to guide intentional cultural change and advancing unity and belonging. And what more do we need? We talk about that all the time, how much we other each other unintentionally because of our trauma responses, and having these tools for self-awareness and helping us to bring more togetherness in our world. She also uses this in corporations, nonprofits, and communities. So the books that she has right now, we're going to be talking about the Enneagram Made Easy, but she is also the author of No Justice, No Peace, and that's K-N-O-W, no, as well as the Enneagram Inner Work Journal series. So she focuses in her work on dismantling marginalization and the practice of othering and helping people and teams reconnect their shared humanity with practical inner work tools. So not only we're going to interview Dr. Deborah today, we are going to be having her in our December book club for the Spiritual Steep Book Club. So this is the episode you want to listen to dive in, to get a taste of what she's offering. And even again, I always say this, even if you don't read the book, you want to come to that book club Zoom to meet her, Q&A, you will be able to absorb a lot of information, because you may say, hey, I'm busy during the holiday season. It's Thanksgiving, and between Thanksgiving and the Christmas time, I don't have a time to read a book. This is something we totally are inviting you, welcome, open arms. It is free, and I will put information in the show notes about that. December 11th at 6 p.m., and we'll share again at the end of the show. But without further ado, let's bring on Dr. E. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking your time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Kara. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, I want to know a little bit about your transition into the Enneagram work to becoming the president of the International Enneagram Society or Association, because it's come a long way. So let's hear what got you into it and how you discovered what it actually is, because a lot of our listeners, this is new to them.
Right. Well, I like to say that the Enneagram finds you, and it finds you at a time when you most need it. And back in the late 90s, I was still on staff at the State University of New York at New Paltz as a therapist. I taught psychology, Black studies. And during that time, when I would have the students coming in, the ones that were on my caseload for therapy, I began to realize that there was something missing for me in the process in terms of letting them go. On college campuses, you're usually given a brief amount of time to work with students, sometimes 4 sessions, sometimes 8, never more than 12. And when I would work with students and then I would have to let them go, I just had this strong feeling that I needed to give them some kind of a roadmap. And I was in a bookstore and I saw this book, Personality Types by Don Riso. And then later on, I found Wisdom of the Enneagram by Riso and Hudson. And I started looking at the Enneagram and recognized, oh my gosh, this is the roadmap that I can actually offer to students and to people who are in my practice to be able to continue to do the work. And what's so important about having found that is the reality that you say to people, do your inner work and you'll be able to get through this. And then people look at you with this blank stare. What the heck is inner work? And so the Enneagram is actually this beautiful, compassionate mirror that reflects yourself, the inner self, back to you. And that helps you to identify your behavioral patterns that you get stuck in. And as I say to people all the time, if doing things that we don't want to do was easy, we wouldn't do them. But we continue to do them because we don't know why we do them. And until you discover and investigate and go deep into the why you are doing what you're doing, it's impossible to change it. And so the Enneagram, which is 9 personality archetypes, the symbol is ancient. We don't know where it originated or how long it's been around, but the psychological aspect, the personality of types, is what we work with the Enneagram now. And that came to the US in the 70s. And, it came through the Jesuits. And they, of course, said, don't tell anyone about it. This is just for your study. Well, you know what happens when you say, don't tell anyone. So now we have it mainstream. And it's this beautiful system that gives people not only hope, but greater freedom to be able to be who they truly are without trying to be performative, and understanding that the most important place that you have to begin is with yourself. I fell in love with it. I did the work myself, continue to do the work, share it with all of the people that I've worked with in organizations, my private coaching clients, and basically teach it all around the world.
And especially a tool that you can use for development and a guide map. I'm curious for when you first did the Enneagram studies for yourself, what was the experience like when you found out your Enneagram type? And if you would be willing to share with us what that is and how that relates to you and the challenges you were maybe experiencing, your strengths, how did that help you with your own journey?
Well, I will tell you, and I say this with all the love in my heart, because I know that sometimes when people truly discover the point that they stand at on the Enneagram, for some people it's just very hard to look at. And I was
Mm-hmm.
one of the people that it was hard to look at. I happened to stand at point one, and by the time I went all around the Enneagram, kept going back and saying, no, it can't be. It just can't be. It just can't be. Yeah, it is. And there was a period of time that was very, very, very uncomfortable for me. I mean, that very first day when I was at the Riso Hudson training workshop back in the 90s, and I discovered that I was a one. We were also staying in the location in Pennsylvania. And I went up to my little room and I curled up in a little ball and I just cried. And the reason that I had that reaction was once I accepted that this is the personality that I show, this is the energy, and that's important for people to understand. What is it? What's your personality? It's an energy that you bring out into the world. And once I discovered the energy that I move through the world with, I could immediately see the ways that I had tried to help but possibly had harmed,
Mm.
possibly had been too rigid, possibly had been too judgmental, possibly had set the bar of expectation based on myself rather than setting the bar and helping someone set their own bar of expectation. It's not always easy to look at yourself. Just imagine getting to look in a mirror and see yourself for the first time ever. You don't know what to think. You
Yeah.
don't know what to do with that. And so that was my experience. And I like to express it as a cautionary tale, but also a very loving way of approaching and coming into who you are, who you were created to be, what you're here to do. You can do none of that unless you really can look at yourself and experience yourself, not just the way you want to, but also with the energy that other people experience from you.
Yeah, that part is really important. I think that sometimes it's really hard. We have a blind eye of like, how do other people experience us and our energy? That's really hard sometimes to recognize or to understand. So, could you tell the listeners, if they're not familiar with the Enneagram, what is the archetype of one, the one type?
The archetype of the one is that of often called the perfectionist. I've never met a one who felt like they were a perfectionist because nothing's ever perfect. I call the one the idealist because really the archetype of the one really wants people to do the right thing and the right way at the right time. It's all about the integrity of being who you said you would be, doing what you said you would do, and showing up in the world in a way where if there's something wrong, you recognize it and you're willing to put in the work to fix it. So I also sometimes identify people who stand at point one as fixers. They really, we want to go out into the world, and if we see something that's broken, we want to fix it. But the challenge at point one is that often the inner critic is so brutal, literally brutal, that if you happen to be a one and you make a mistake, it's like the world is going to end. I spilled coffee on the paper, and this is just major. So there's this need to do things the right way. I say tattooed on the forehead of people who identify at point one is, why is it so hard just to do the right thing? Just do the right thing. The
Yeah.
challenge is the right thing through whose lens. And
Yes.
yeah, that's the sticky point at point one. It's like, do the right thing. This is the right thing. When someone else is saying, no, I don't think that's the right thing. And that's very difficult for ones to accept because there is an inner wisdom, an inner knowing. We have three centers of intelligence, really. We've learned more about that now scientifically: our brain, where we have knowledge, our heart, where we hold the emotions, and the belly center, which holds the body together in terms of intuition, intuiting what is going on. So for a one, sometimes those quick answers that come out, they're not coming from here, they're coming from here. They're coming from that. They're coming from the intuitive center that's saying, this is what the right thing is. So when someone with knowledge of a situation challenges the intuitive response of a one, there can be a little bit of tension in that because that may be what you know, but this is what I believe right in the core of my belly is the right thing to do. So you can see how if we go look at all nine types, there are these kinds of challenges that come up between human beings all the time. And they don't know how to break it down to be able to look at why we don't see things the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. I really am really incredibly admiring the fact that you leaned into that and then you were in that space where you didn't want to accept it, but you moved into it. I think that that's a really challenging thing. And I will share briefly the tools of the Enneagram. I'm so glad it's coming back into my life right now at this very time. You said it comes when it's time. I've used a lot of astrological tools and even human design, and we've talked about that on the podcast And I think at whatever system anyone chooses, it's again, that self inquiry is really profoundly life altering. And one of the things that I had to lean into just from a different lens, a different system, was this last year of recognizing how other people perceive me. And there's a lot, I mean, people project on each other. This is just what we do psychologically. But I have a much bigger field of projection according to the human design. And it made so much sense. I said, yeah, no matter what I do, and it is all like, I want to do the right thing. I don't know if I'm a one or not. I haven't taken my Enneagram since the 90s, and I don't remember what it was. But it was really a profound thing when I started to understand that people project onto me either as the savior, the visionary leader, or the villain. And I had to sit with that. And I thought, oh my gosh, because that maybe the people pleaser in me was like, I don't want anyone to ever think that. Oh my gosh. And then this control part comes out. And it was a lot of emotions that came up to process. And mentally, how do I accept that this is how it is? And of course, no matter what you do, there's going to be people that don't like you. But I really love the fact that there's, again, more tools to explore the self. So for those who maybe are not familiar, again, this is brand new to them, could you briefly just go through the 9 different types, just maybe the titles briefly, so we have an idea of the system?
Sure. Now, the Enneagram is a system of personality types that come from personality archetype types that actually shows us 9 different ways of being in the world. And we have all 9 of those energies within us, but one of those energies leads. One of them dominates. You will hear me when I talk about the Enneagram, I use the word point rather than type because in my work over time, I've come to recognize that some people resist being typed. They don't like that. Whether you use the word point or type, you stand at a particular point, and that point is where your dominant energy resides. But remember, all 8 of those other energies are within you. So at point 1, you have the idealist, and that is, of course, the person who is about integrity, do the right thing, and that unfortunately suffers from a very, very, very brutal and painful inner critic. We all have one, but the inner critic at point 1 is particularly punitive. At point 2, we have the more of the people pleaser. The person who stands at point 2, we call the helper or the giver. This is a person who is a people pleaser, who really does want to help everyone, that has a heart for people, and feels good about being a good person, being that person who will show up for you. At the same time, people who stand at point 2 tend to spread themselves way too thin, and they don't take care of the most important resource that they have, which is their self. So they will give it all out and exhaust themselves trying to please and help people sometimes that they don't even like. And it's a real eye-opening experience when people who stand at point 2 recognize, oh my God, that's me. Why am I twisting myself into a pretzel to try to be kind and loving and do things for someone who treats me so badly? So
Yeah.
at point 2, it's all about love, to give and to receive love. The question is, of course, looking for love in all the wrong places and spaces sometimes, and not accepting the fact that love begins here. It begins with you. You cannot give what you do not have. And so that's the story of the 2. At point 3, we have the achiever, the person who it's all about the success. Somewhere along the way, bringing home those trophies and gold medals, the recognition kicked in that this is how I know that I am of some value, of some worth. I succeed. I get things done. I'm the best. If you say to a person who has the energy that leads at point 3, oh, let's just look at this competition as it's not about whether or not you win or lose, it's how you play the game. But 3 is going to say, heck no, it's about winning. It's all about the winning. So the energy at point 3 really wants to be successful and wants to be admired and seen for the hard work that they put in order to be able to be successful. There's a little bit of a faulty connection between the head and the heart at point 3, because sometimes to be successful, some of the sacrifices that get made really wound the heart. And you can imagine, I'm going to go to my kids' first school play, or I'm going to go to London and I'm going to close that deal, you know? So those kinds of challenges come up at point 3. At point 4, we have the creative. We have the person who is all about looking at and understanding deeply the beauty of the world in all its forms, in the broken spaces, in the hard places. Point 4 energy is, off the hook usually in terms of the capacity for creating art, music, literature, whatever. It's the creative energy that we all have. But if you lead with that energy, you really bring something out into the world that is incredible. I often use the example of, if you go and see a little jazz trio and there's maybe 3 people on the stage and 2 of them are just playing, but one of them is having an entirely different experience. They have become one with their instrument. It's like, wow, you know, that one is really into the music. But fours, with all the beauty that they are able to bring out into the world, the interesting thing about fours is that it's at a cost. And the cost is fours retain a residue, sort of a residual reservoir of the pain and suffering that they've experienced. And at any point in time can go back and touch the pain of that experience, which is often what will, of course, allow them to create and bring something out into the world. Fours often experience overwhelm and melancholy. And usually, if you don't know the Enneagram and you don't know how to really get into what's going on with that, a person can lead a very sad and lonely life. If you look at the lives of some of our greatest artists and musicians, it tracks. It really tracks. That's just one example of how helpful it is. At point 5, we have really the investigator, the person who goes very deep into wanting to understand how all things are connected. Really seeing the big picture and understanding that, you can't just pull a little piece of something out of the middle and not understand where it began or where it is going. They want to understand it all. And they can be a little socially awkward, and at the same time, just usually know a whole lot about a myriad of different things, but are specialists in some particular area. And I say to fives so very often, when the research gets better for you, is more satisfying than your relationships with people, it's time to come in and do a little work, because a 5 will tell you data is reliable, people are not. Data can be predictable, people are unpredictable. So there is a bent towards leaning into what is predictable and understandable, and that's where the energy goes. But also at point 5, there can be some melancholy as well, because finding a way to fit into the flow of life when you're busy studying the flow of life can be very difficult. And so sometimes fives feel like, where are my people? Where's my group of folks? And that's the way fives move through the world. At point 6, we have people who are looking to be prepared. We're looking for that situation that could come and you would be unprepared for it. And yet sixes are prepared for it because they have something known as worst case scenario thinking. So worst case scenario thinking can be very helpful, if you're prepared for things and you're helping people. But just think about if you have worst case scenario thinking about everything. How do you send your kids to school in the world that we live in today? How do you actually let go and live with a sense of it's all going to work out? If the dominant energy is telling you, watch, 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 watch. So at point six, we have people who are wonderful at sort of visualizing what's going to happen, what the next step that is going to be needed. But that can also be very exhausting. I have to insert a little anecdote here because I love to talk about my experience with one of my best friends who happens to be a six. And we took our families took a cruise together one year. And all my husband told me was, we're going to South America. I think South America, I think warm. So I pack shorts and bathing suits and I'm all happy. And I wake up one morning and I look out the door and there's like icy water. And, we have to go through the Straits of Magellan and up around that area where it does get cold. And I'm like, what the heck? And I hear this knock at my door. And it was my dear friend Lourdes. And she was standing there and she had a jacket, a little hat, and some gloves. And she looks at me, she's Spanish, and so English is not her first language. So when I imitate her, I'm not making fun of her, but it's so sweet. And she says, Deborah, I think maybe you will not remember that we get cold in this part of the world. So I bring these things for you.
Oh.
And my heart just melted. I don't go on vacations anymore without her because that's just the way that sixes move through the world. In your office setting, if you have a six there, if you say, I have a headache, does anybody have something for the headache? It would not be an unusual circumstance for the six in your space to say, well, I have Advil, Aleve, and Excedrin. Which one do you need? Because they're prepared. So that's kind of the way that sixes move through the world. They like structure and order and being prepared for what life is going to throw at anyone. And then we have point seven. At point seven, we have the enthusiast, and that is someone who really wants to see the, the high side of everything. Life is for us to enjoy. Life is about being happy. And so sevens have this way of lifting everyone's spirits just by entering the room with that uplifting energy. And of course, the challenge there is everything isn't always uplifting and everything isn't always happy. And so, sevens struggle with being in spaces where people tend to dwell on negative things or tend to do the same thing all the time. Sevens don't really do well in jobs where they're having to do the same thing over and over again. They like variety. They love freedom. Don't don't nail me down. So sevens can be very, very easy to sort of disappear when things are getting too gloomy and to find a place where they can still maintain a spirit of joy. And then we have the one more thing about sevens. They have more ideas before breakfast than most people have in a lifetime. I always say that about sevens. I didn't say good ideas, but just more ideas. They're the idea people. So from seven, we move to eight. And at point eight, we have folks who are no nonsense. Going to tell it like it is. Sorry if you don't like it. Sorry, not sorry. But this is just the way it is. Usually, people who stand at point eight are strong, solid, no nonsense, will very much put you in your place if you come incorrect. according through their lenses, and will tell you about yourself, sometimes in a fashion that can feel a little harsh. And at the same time, once it has been gotten out of the system, there's no problem. Now we're good. Let's go to lunch. And of course, the person who has been the recipient of what might have been a temporary smackdown doesn't want to go to lunch at that point. But the eights, while there may be a tough exterior, they have these very warm, mushy hearts. And they tend to champion the underdog. They will be the person that moves into a space of allyship and advocacy when they see things that are going wrong in the world, because actually it makes them very angry. And to know an eight well is to love an eight, because you get to see all parts. You don't just get to see what might be a thorny exterior. You get to see what's in the heart of an eight. And then finally, we come around to nine. And at point nine, we have peacemakers, people who are actually saying, really, why can't we all get along? People who stand at point nine make brilliant mediators, because they don't come into mediation with an agenda, like a personal agenda, like most of us have an agenda when we go into any kind of mediation. The agenda of the nine is to get to peace. And so they will sacrifice their own feelings in order to create the peace that may be needed to move things forward. Nines tend to have what I call little caves that they go and recharge in, often need that recharging time because we exhaust them. Because in the world, people are always acting up and accusing each other of something, and nines go out into the world and say, oh gosh, this again. So they need a little, just chill time. Just give them a moment or two. I have a lot of nine clients who have shared with me that sometimes, because they know once they go into the house, they're going to be consumed by the energy of everyone that they live with, they'll just sit in their car, maybe for 15, 30, sometimes an hour, and just try to unwind, listen to music, or, now there's the portable cave called the phone, and just
Yeah.
do something that's relaxing. But really, ultimately, the goal of the nine is not just to have peace within themselves, but to have peace across the land. Because if there's a disturbance in the land, it's also disturbing the inner peace of the nine. So that's our nine basic archetypes in a few very quick minutes.
Thank you. And I'm sure the listeners, you guys were listening to that, maybe identifying parts of yourself, because Dr. E said about this being not just types, but points of like we hold all these different archetypes, but also maybe thinking about friends or family or coworkers or, different characters, in the world. And I'm observing Dr. E like this type of system, I can see so many uses for it, not just in organizations and leadership, in working with family dynamics, understanding yourself and someone else better, personal relationships. But can you share a little bit of other tools or maybe any other uses that you have supported people with using the Enneagram for their journey?
Well, you know, when I am supporting people with the Enneagram for their journey, I always look at where they think they're trying to go. Some people are trying to get out of bad circumstances. I can tell you that in my past, I have directed Runaway Shelters, Center for Abused and Battered Women. And that was early on in my career. And I just wish I had known the Enneagram then. I know it now. I can help people like that now. I find that supporting leaders in organizations to be able to understand their own humanity helps them to understand the humanity of the people that they're leading. And I have had some experiences that I really wish that there had been someone recording at the moment when I go into an organization and I create talking circles. And I don't work just with the C-suite, the executives. I work when I take a contract to work with an organization, I want to work with the whole organization. And by the time we get to a point where we're bringing everyone together, the CEO, who may happen to be a white male, and the person who's in charge, or just one of the maintenance workers who may be a Latina, and we discover that they are both eights and they're in the eight talking circle together. And Kara, I can't tell you what it feels like to watch hierarchy just sort of dissolve. Because in that talking circle, they're talking about the way they move through the world. And so they begin talking about the way they say they have kids, the way they raise their children, and what are the non-negotiables, and what are the things that they do not want to tolerate from anyone else, or what they feel needs to change in the world. When they're having that conversation, all of a sudden, all of the societal stuff is not as important, because now they're going in and they're talking about what they value. But you can't get there without doing the inner work. And so, what we have in the world today is people walking around using external tools and systems, but not going inside to find out whether or not the tools or systems that they're connected to are really germane to who they are inside. If you're in an organization and someone says, we've got to do this particular type of work. Now, I won't name any of them because I don't want to demean any particular tool that people are using. But what I discovered is that if people can't keep growing with a tool, if you can't keep uncovering different parts of yourself, recognizing that in different seasons of your life, different things emerge and different things begin to fall away. If you're not working with that type of tool, you're not growing. And it's not as simple as, okay, so I'm not growing. So what? Well, the problem is not only are you not growing, but then you're going backwards because the world is still moving. So, really doing your own work and looking at yourself, discovering and honoring and loving your own humanity, that's what allows you to be able to bridge a divide or to repair a rupture. You know, it's finding out who you are and finding out how you operate so that you can actually share with people what you need in a relationship, whatever
Yes.
kind of relationship it is.
Yes. Yes. I think that I've been primed for this type of internal work. I joke, I have a book on my bookshelf. People ask me, what's your favorite book that you ever owned? And I have so many favorite books, but I'll pull out a book that has a picture of Big Bird and Cookie Monster on it. And the title of the book is Who Am I? So that book, like that, just the whole premise of that, I think that when we diving into ourselves and learning about who we are and what our needs are, it really does improve everything around us, because we can then dismantle, like you're saying, these things that are not who we are, these systems that we've been implanted in. But I often find when people enter into a system, I love what we said about it has to grow with you. Because when people enter into a system like this, or maybe even astrology or any other system out there, even Myers-Briggs, where this is putting you in a box, typing you, it comes from a place of, instead of inquiry of who am I feel like it comes from this place of tell me who I am. And that to me
Yes.
is like giving away your power to the system, to the tool. And I really love that you said that, because that's why I'm curious. My next question is, do we change our Enneagram number throughout our life as we grow and evolve, or shift into different life stages?
The answer to that is no.
Okay, I'm
Easy
curious, but
question to
we
answer.
we still have all the
We're
archetypes
we're
there.
born. You have all of them, and they're all in you. And what happens is we're born with our Enneagram type pretty much in place, and then after we're born, life begins to happen. And depending upon where you grew up, who raised you, there are different overlays that we talk about, cultural overlays, a parental overlay. There can be all types of things that influence you, but that core type is there. And the Enneagram, I think, in so many ways, is the opposite of many other tools because the Enneagram is about liberation.
Hmm.
It's about getting you out of the box, not putting you in a box. But you can't get out of a box that you don't know you're in. So that's the tricky part. And very often, people will self type and they'll self type incorrectly. And later on in life, they'll realize, oh my God, I thought I was a 2, but I'm really a 9. Well, that sometimes happens because you've gotten a better handle on who you really are. A lot of people type based on test. I have a test on my website, and I tell people all the time go there, take the little quiz, but hold it lightly. And the
Hmm.
reason that you have to hold it lightly is because a test to me is not the definitive way of finding your type. You really have to have done some reading, had done some experiential work, and some really deep soul searching. You're not doing deep soul searching when you take a quick quiz. Some people get lucky and they get the right result the first time out. Some people don't. But as we go through life, we the best way that I can put it is that if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're going to repeat them.
Yeah.
And so as you go through life, sometimes wisdom and the ability to recognize I can't keep doing this kicks in. And so we make behavioral changes. The behavioral change does not change your core type. It just means that you've developed more wisdom about what to do with the anger or the quest for constant success or the need to know everything or the need to help everyone. That won't stop you from being the dominant energy that you are, but you manage it better. You learn to be healthier in your type, and that's what it's all about. Healthy, average, and unhealthy levels. And what you want to pay attention to is are you growing in the health of your energy, or are you really down here in some really negative energy that is part of your type, but you don't know how to get healthier? So the type doesn't change, the work does. It gets more intense, it gets deeper.
Wow. Yeah, and I really am really excited to dive into the book. And I have one more question before we go into our final questions. For anyone that's picking up this book, so joining the book club with us or anywhere at any time, the Enneagram Made Easy, as someone who's reading through that book, what advice do you have for them to really go into it with? What type of mindset and how to maybe avoid mistyping themselves?
Mhm. Very good. Excellent question. As I wrote Enneagram Made Easy because, as we've talked today, you recognize that, the Enneagram is a bottomless well. It is something that you can start to study when you're a teenager and still be studying when you're in your 90s, and you never get to the bottom of it. And recognizing how deep it goes, one of the things that I sought to do was to break it down into bite sized chunks, manageable chunks, and to demystify the language. The terminology of the Enneagram, once you've really started it and you really study it, you understand all of the language. But if you're just coming along, there's terminology that's just over your head. I mean, there's just no question. It's kind of over your head. So I take the time to make sure that each of the terms that are used, we have terms like the passion, the fixation, the virtue, holy ideas. Those are very important elements of the Enneagram, but that's not where you're going to start. You're going to start with understanding that there are 9 basic archetypes. You're going to start with understanding that you have wings on either side of your primary energy, of your lead type. And understanding that the Enneagram is not a stagnant system, it's an active system. And so there's movement and understanding how important the movement is to your own growth and development, through the lines and the arrows. So, like I said, when I was writing it, I wanted to write it where someone who had never heard of the Enneagram before could pick it up and they could track with the different elements by understanding that the passion is the way that we suffer, that the virtue is trying to get to our higher self, a higher level of wellness, and putting out the energy in the world from the high place and not the low place. So understanding the language helps you to understand how to operate within the system. Learning more and more about how to operate into the system actually and puts you in a place of complete wonder, because one morning you wake up and you realize, wow, I was really operating at a low level of energy yesterday in that interaction. I need to repair that. And so there's not this, holding on to negative things. You learn how to bring the system in to you and embody it. And then when you go out into the world, your relationships change. The way you view people changes. Your empathy and your compassion grows exponentially beyond your imagination. When you pick up Enneagram Made Easy, and I have to be careful of that because it's not the Enneagram Made Easy. There's another book out there by that name. I think there are 2 other Enneagram Made Easy, so people have to look for my name and that turquoise beautiful cover, or
Yeah.
they'll get the wrong one. Mm-hmm.
We'll make sure we put all that information in the show notes too for everyone for direct access to that. And of course, link for the book club to sign up for that so they can get up close and personal with you for a live Q&A. I'm curious, is there anything else about your work right now that you want to share? Any upcoming events you're doing? I saw that you and Abiola had 2, I think, was it 1 or 2, one event that you were doing in last summer. Oh my gosh, that was such a cool thing. I wish I would have been able to come to that. Anything like cool that you would like to share that's exciting coming up for you in the next year, or anything else we
Um,
can follow you, learn more about your work?
Absolutely. It's something that is starting now, and I'm telling people to go to my website and just sign up so we can send them all the information. But Deep Living Lab and DeborahEgerton.com, we've come together and we are launching Sacred Sisterhood. And Sacred Sisterhood is for women and femmes who are looking to actually bridge the divide. So we're going to be working with women across the racial divide, the age divide, the religion, spirituality divide. I believe with every fiber of my being that the times that we're going through right now requires for women and the energy of the divine feminine within men as well as women to come forward, because through my lens and in my heart, I see a world that needs nurturing, that needs love, that needs kindness, empathy, and compassion. And women can lead the way on that, but we have to come together to do it. And we have to look at ways that we have not supported each other, and that must stop. That has to stop. If we want a better world for those who come after us, then we have to do this work now, and we have to do it together. So I am putting out an action call to all women and femmes who want to be involved. And, and I'm not excluding them. There may be some men who would be very comfortable in a sacred sisterhood circle because they're connected to that divine feminine energy within them. And so they are welcome as well. But I really do want women to understand that this is our time. This is our
Yeah.
time to stand up, to speak. I call it, really, really, she has risen.
Mm.
We
I
all
love it.
feel it. What are we going to do about it? We feel it. So what are we going to do about it? Additionally, I host something where I'm trying to get as many people as possible to join. On Friday mornings, I play a particular album. It's called The Prayer Cycle, and it's a symphony in 9 movements, and it's done in all different languages, but it's just a meditation, and it takes about 48 minutes. And I just open up my Zoom and anybody that wants to come in. But I want as many people as possible to open up a Zoom in their community and to do this same meditation, just sitting for these 40 or 45 minutes, just holding space for peace and love and for the world to come back together.
Yeah.
So, those are some exciting things that are coming up right now.
Thank you so much. I got the spirit, the goosebumps of the movement through my body and in the work you're doing and the passion and the alignment is what I'm feeling is as you're feeling coming alive in me as you're talking. So we are going to put all that information in the show notes for all of you. Dr. E, I have two final questions that I ask every guest when they come on our show for the first time. And the first question is, what currently is like your favorite self-care routine or product or something that you're really enjoying? It could be a podcast or a book, something that's really lighting you up and filling up your cup in your own personal time right now.
It's really interesting for me. And the thing that really fills my cup right now is travel. Travel to different parts of the world and taking the time to listen to what people think about what's happening in the world. I'm not this person that's constantly on the news looking to see, what's happening there. But I am traveling around the world and I am sitting with people and I am listening to their stories and allowing myself to have the goosebumps, allowing myself to have the empathy or the compassion or the surprise or the shock or the awe, whatever may come. But it is keeping myself really connected to a global community. That just fills my soul. You know, we have more in common as human beings than we ever acknowledge. And so that's my constant reminder that you may live in Singapore, but wow, when we get together and then we stay together because we connect over Zoom, it's like we live in the same space and we really care about each other. So I'm cultivating and nurturing my global relationships, and that's helping me a lot. Favorite product? I actually I order hibiscus flowers dried, and I make hibiscus tea from these flowers that come from Egypt.
Wow.
And in moments when I just feel like, okay, I don't know what to do and I'm exhausted, I will go and I will brew this hibiscus tea. And then I'll just sit there with a cup full of, it's a beautiful red color. It's a wonderful fragrance. And it just sort of warms me up from the inside out. So
Mm.
that's one of my favorite little moments.
Mm. Thank you for sharing. And I would be curious if you don't already share your stories of the connections globally, either in like a blog or a podcast or, posting or your Zoom. That's something that I feel we need more of those stories. And I'm sure that our listeners would feel the same that that those perspectives are so cherished and valued. And I'm, for me, personally would love to hear them. So do you have anywhere that you're sharing those things yet, or you have any plans to do so?
Well, I do have my podcast, and it's called the Mosaic, and it's a wonderful mixture of people from all around the world, and we talk about all kinds of things. So the Humanity Mosaic, and it's on all podcast stations. So I've paused it for a while because people are now kind of catching up. They're like, wait, 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 wait. So I paused it over this summer. I'll begin it up again very soon. But a lot of the stories are in there. Many of the stories are in No Justice, No Peace with a K. And also my newsletter, which comes out every week. Usually I share in there an experience that I've had with someone. Yeah, because
Perfect. I'm so glad to hear that.
those stories are important, and often, I mean, recently I've been spending a fair amount of time with one of my grandsons because he happens to be in Philadelphia. And I talk to him about travel and meeting people all over the world because I want young people to recognize that they have an opportunity now for incredible connection that didn't exist when I was growing up. And the more we make these global connections, the less othering we will do.
Yes.
The less othering we
100%.
will do. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Well, my final question then, that I ask everyone at the end, is if you could detox one thing from your life or the world right now, what would it be?
It would be othering. It
Yes.
would absolutely be othering. Serves no purpose. It truly does not. And, in so many ways, it's just unbelievable how much harm we are doing to ourselves, much less to the people on the other side of the othering. And we all do it. That's something that I think is really important. We all need that detox because it doesn't really matter if your othering happens to be one particular group of people and you've decided, well, those are just the bad people in the world, so I have every right to other them. You need to do some work on that. You maybe need to find a friend, someone who can talk to you from that particular community that you think is so heinous. Watch your heart begin to soften once you recognize that, you know, they have the same challenges that you do, maybe even harder. Maybe it's different. It can be a family member that you're othering across political lines. If you decide that you're just not going to speak to that person because you don't like their political affiliation, where's the voice of change, of possibility that they are going to experience if you are the closest person to them that might have brought them a different view? Othering is, unfortunately, it's just part of human nature, and it's fear based.
Yeah.
So a detox from the fear that causes us to other, and
Yes.
an infusion of love and empathy and compassion. Look for the good in people. And in these groups of people that you think are so bad, allow yourself to explore maybe what their contribution has been to the world. Allow yourself to look at some prominent figures, maybe in that group of people who have done good in the world. Just challenge yourself to find the good instead of staying mired in the concrete and getting pulled into the quicksand of believing the worst about everyone or anyone. That's something that I would love for all of us to be able to do a real detox around.
Mm. Thank you so much for that. Is absolutely incredible. And I will share, if this podcast episode has inspired any of you listeners out there, share this, because all the tools, not just this episode, but any episode, any media out there right now that's really inspiring you, don't just scroll past it or heart it. Share these things with people that maybe need to hear them, that might be open to hearing them. We don't have to always be evangelical about something that we found that works for us, but open curiosity to people that might support. I find that, the detoxing othering is really coming together as a human species, and we can't always do that until we come together with ourselves. And these tools like the Enneagram and the things we talk about on this podcast for integration of the self, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and even from a nervous system perspective, getting ourselves out of that fight, flight, fawn, freeze response, which we do for the Mind Body Detox program, can help us then be more open and receptive to these tools, being able to integrate them and being able to watch our somatic bodies when we enter into explore a group that we might have had judgments or fear-based thoughts around. And I think that it's all integrating all these things together so we can really bring humanity into a more evolved state. I think that's what we're all doing together, and we're all playing a role. So it's just absolutely beautiful to meet you, Dr. E, and about the work you're doing. And I will share, guys, come to the book club. Come to the book club. It is going to be December 11th. 6 p.m. we'll be doing a Zoom with Dr. E so we can ask her questions. You can send your questions in ahead of time if you're not able to join live. And we are actually hoping that possibly, if calendars align, we can get Dr. E to come to our New Visions Holistic Expo or one of our events coming up, because she is located in Philadelphia, so not too far away. So the more interest and leaning in that we hear from you, the more likely we can potentially book that with you, Dr. E. So thank you again so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you. This was lovely.
Yes, thank you again. And again, you guys, if you love this podcast, go ahead and give it a review. Thank you again for listening, and be well until next time, my friends. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox podcast. If you loved this podcast, share it with others and leave us a review. Your reviews help us more than you know and supports us continuing to make episodes and being heard from all over the world. You can also follow the link in our show notes to submit a topic that you would like to hear on the show.